Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're a little or a lot intimidated by classics, then I'm hoping that this list of recommendations can help you get started. I feel like the fall and winter is a really great time to dip your toes in the classics genre if you never have before. If you're anything like me, you just love to curl up with a blanket, a hot cup of tea, and get into a good book. And I feel like now is the time where you can kind of slow down and enjoy something that's maybe a little more meandering, if you will. A lot of classics can be slow, but they don't all have to be. There are a lot of really contemporary feeling and short, easy to read classics that I feel like are a great starting point. So that being said, if you have read a lot of classics before, if you're not intimidated by them, then this video probably isn't for you. These are all classics that I have personally read and I feel like are just an easy way to transition into the classic genre. So you're not starting out with like a War and Peace type of situation, because that's gonna probably turn you off of classics if you're not used to them. So what is a classic? In general, it's a book that's considered to be widely accepted as an impactful piece of literature to society. It stands the test of time. It spans multiple generations. It's well written, well received. To me, it really just means like the best of the best. Something that's message and writing can kind of transcend that cultural divide. Something I think that intimidates people the most about classics is just the general writing style. The English language that is used a lot of the time can be quite different than what we're used to now. But to me, that's one of the most fun things about it. Reading a classic to me is kind of like the closest thing I can get to time traveling and just feeling like I'm in a completely different world. So my top tips for a classic when you're looking for one that you want to pick up, if you are intimidated by them and you find yourself struggling to get through them, is one, pick something on the shorter side. Two, pick a subject that actually interests you. And three, find something that seems seasonal for the time period that you're reading it. You know, read something like Anne of Green Gables in the spring. Read Wuthering Heights in the winter. I think the setting of the book, reflecting your current situation, can kind of help to immerse you in the story more, make it feel more real, more timely. My first classic recommendation on this list is probably one that you have heard of before and see on these type of recommendations lists for a good reason, and that is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I love this edition, by the way, but as you can see, this is a very short book. It's very easy to read. This one, I don't know, I mean, each kind of version of this might change a bit, but this one is under 200 pages. This is set in the 1920s in the Jazz Age, and it's just full of all of that luxe, glitz, glamour, drama that I feel like really pulls you into the story. I personally really love a kind of dramatic classic. I think that's a common theme. If you kind of enjoy reading about like rich people problems, then that's kind of what this is. Basically about a millionaire, Jay Gatsby, who develops an obsession with his married neighbor, Daisy. I also really enjoy the Leonardo DiCaprio movie adaptation of this. There's a personal preference. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think this one is just short, fun, and a really great introduction to the classic genre. F. Scott Fitzgerald really has a way with words, why he's one of the most well-known classic authors of all time. I'm sorry, I'm just peeling the sticker off of this one, and I'm not actually gonna take the time to do that. These two I'm going to recommend together because I feel like they kind of have the same vibe, and that is Brave New World and 1984. These two are ones that are going to make you question everything. Very, very important reads to familiarize yourself with in our current political landscape. They both kind of give a warning to what a certain type of future could look like. 1984 is by George Orwell. This is essentially about Big Brother, big government. Brave New World is a satirical utopian future where basically humans are like genetically modified to kind of like fall into order and be like this perfect utopian society. They're both just creepy because, you know, life imitates art, honestly, and I just think these are both really important reads. They're both kind of considered to be like cautionary tales, and I think because of that, they can be a bit like jarring in the sense that it might give you a little bit of anxiety. These go on this list not just because I think they're important reads, because their writing style is just more readable. It's more contemporary. Technically, I believe they are considered to be a bit more contemporary and when they were written, but they are definitely both classics. So definitely recommend both of those. Also, I don't have a copy of this one, but I do remember reading this one in college. This is another similar kind of vibe to this utopian, dystopian, societal kind of commentary, and that is Animal Farm, which is also by George Orwell. Basically about a bunch of farm animals who rebel against humans, seeking like equality, fair treatment, things like that. Just incredibly clever and interesting and well done. This one is just a kind of fun classic, especially if you're big fans of like fantasy, Disney, anything like that. And that's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll. This is just whimsical, fun, really easy to read, especially like this version. I don't know if this is in all of them, but like this one has like a chessboard in it. And then this one's also broken up into two kind of different stories, so you can just kind of read one and then take a break from it, and it's nice and short. This is actually Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and then Through the Looking Glass are the two kind of separate stories. This one I just feel like is obviously going to be lighter, more fun, and I just feel like a really easy entry point into classics. I personally also love this classic Disney movie. I think it's fun to read something like this and then watch the movie. My next recommendation on this list is one of my personal favorite classics that I have read, and that's The Picture of Dorian Gray. This was actually the first book that I like kind of annotated as well, because I got, let's see, I got 60 pages into this without annotating it, and then I just stopped and I was like, I need to stop everything I'm doing and actually mark this up because it's so gorgeous. Again, it's just really short, very dramatic. This one's another kind of cautionary tale, kind of warns of like the dangers of self-obsession, the obsession with looks and appearances. The Picture of Dorian Gray is essentially about a artist who does a portrait of this young man, Dorian Gray. His mental state deteriorates the more and more that he becomes obsessed with this portrait of himself and terrified of the thought of him aging and like losing his beauty. This is just so interesting to read. It's written so beautifully. Of all of them on this list, this is definitely the one that I would recommend for like real beginners the most. It's just so easy to get into. Also one that I feel like is just really like self-reflective, but in a really smart, funny, dramatic way. Like this is just one of the most dramatic books I've ever read, and I just love that. Speaking of drama, I feel like that's a common theme in classics as well. They're just so damn dramatic. Like these writers are the epitome of what you just picture when you think of a classic author, just like drinking their life away in a dimly lit room with candles, just being like, oh my God, like he didn't write me a letter today. Like, what am I to do? Just kind of like insanely delusional drama. And I love that. And that kind of leads me into my next recommendation, which is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I read this more recently than a lot of these other classics, and it wasn't my favorite. However, I do still think it's a really easy classic to get into because so much of Sylvia Plath in this, she writes this, and it's not technically an autobiography, but you can tell that like Sylvia Plath wrote this like with the main character like through her own experience. You know what I mean? This is about a young woman who kind of goes off into the world for the first time, gets her first job. She's 18, she's fresh, and it just kind of follows her and again her demise into just spiraling because of everything that life has thrown at her, not understanding who she is. One of the blurbs on this I feel like does a really good job of kind of just giving the vibes of this one. The narrator in this book, it's Esther Greenwood. It's a haunting American classic. The narrator simply describes herself as feeling very still and very empty, the way the eye of a tornado must feel. This in-between moment is just what Miss Plath's poetry does catch brilliantly. The moment poised on the edge of chaos. It's just very much like a young girl feeling lost and dealing with her depression. So I feel like it is kind of heavy, talking through her feelings of emptiness and depression and despair. I don't know, I just feel like it's an easy one to get into, especially for young women. I feel like you will really relate a lot of the time to the narrator of this one. And this one again is only like 220-ish pages. A lot of people I feel like immediately go for like a Pride and Prejudice or a Little Women, and personally I found those hard to get through. They're really long. And even though there's a lot of like point of views in something like Little Women, where I don't actually know the POV specifically, but there's the four sisters, you're getting a lot of kind of different storylines. I still think it was a little bit rough to get through. It's like 600 pages. My personal favorite is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This one is not short, it is long. I'm personally a fan of the Bronte sister books more than any of the other like Jane Austens or Louisa May Alcott's I have read. That's just a personal preference. I did enjoy Pride and Prejudice, but I do feel like the book was a little bit slow for me. Jane Eyre, I think maybe it's just the way that this coming of age story is written. I just feel like it's so much more relatable than some of the other ones that I mentioned. This is a coming of age story, and I just feel like it's one where I found myself relating just so much to the character, just like so effortlessly funny. I just really enjoy the kind of dramatic undertones of the Bronte sisters' writing. I also really love Wuthering Heights, and I personally would recommend that one as like an honorable mention for the winter. Wuthering Heights is by Emily Bronte. This is Charlotte Bronte. I just personally really enjoy the Bronte sisters style of writing. So there's romance in this, there's kind of like mystery. Jane Eyre is just a very like strong, independent kind of woman in the times when, you know, that was just a tough place to be. So Jane Eyre is my personal recommendation if you're gonna think about like a Pride and Prejudice, a Little Women. It's very intense, and I feel like it just really pulls you in. More so than some of the others in this similar genre that I have read. So I love this one. I would really love to reread it. I read this in high school, and I just remember thinking like, wow, this is what classics can be? That wasn't so bad. I hope this gave you some ideas of some books that you can start if you are looking to embark on your classics journey. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please be sure to subscribe, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.